TV is me, the homie B. How's everyone doing today? Today, we got another one of those videos, man. We got another one of those videos. Today, I'm gonna be reacting to the real life Squid Games. Let's get right into it. Happy Friday, y'all. Let's go.
In the 1980s, children in South Korea were abducted from the streets, vagrants were rounded up, and those considered unseemly were hidden away. They were taken by the police and loaded into vans to be locked away at the brothers' welfare home. In this welfare home, they were subjected to beatings, abuse, forced labour, and SA, and hundreds were murdered. The brothers' home was described as a concentration camp with similarities to
All right. I wasn't. Hey, I wasn't ready for this. Damn, they just jumped right into it though. Okay. All right. So off the bat, look at these guys. They got the shoes going on. Okay. Oh yeah, this is like Squid Game for real. Damn, I thought this was one of those. Thought this was one of those guys with the circles and X's and O's and whatever in the show. But yeah, off the bat, this is already dark. Let's keep going.
the Squid Games. It is believed to be one of the worst examples of human rights abuse in recent years. In today's video, we will cover the disturbing crimes of the brothers' welfare home, the harrowing stories of those who survived, and the failings of the Korean authorities to bring those responsible to justice. Following the absolute horrors of the Korean Civil War, the military junta governing South Korea set about cleaning up the country. Several homes for vagrants were established, one of which was called the Brothers' Home, and was set up in the city of Busan. The Brothers' Home began as an orphanage but soon developed to house adults in the early 1970s. In 1975, the Brothers' Home entered an arrangement with the government to become an official detention center for vagrants in the Busan area. Not long after, South Korea was selected to host the Olympic Games in 1988. The Korean government was eager to clean the streets, removing homeless people in an effort to present a positive image to the rest of the world, sending these people to the likes of the Brothers' Home. Police officers would be incentivized, receiving commendations and chances at promotion based on how many vagrants they could get off the streets. Unsurprisingly, this led to all types of people being detained by the police and sent to the Brothers' Home. Children walking home from school, lost in the mall, or waiting for a relative would be picked up by the police. People simply visiting Busan would be treated with suspicion, including one 15-year-old boy who was arrested as soon as he stepped foot off the train. Some were accused of crimes, including one 14-year-old boy detained on suspicion of stealing a loaf of bread, forced to confess with a lit lighter held against his testicles. Of all of the
Oh
inmates at
my
this home,
God. Damn. That's crazy. Excuse me, y'all. Wow, okay. So these guys are just I don't know, man. It's too early on in the video, but this just seemed like just a camp, just to torture these young kids, man. Wow, that damn, that's sheesh. All right, let's go.
only 30% could be described as vagrants. The vast majority were targeted and detained without a cause. Those taken would be loaded into vans, driven through the steel gates to the brothers' home. Behind the tall walls, they would begin their time as little more than slaves. The inmates would be stripped of all of their identity. Their hair would be shaved off, their clothing confiscated and replaced with a uniform, blue tracksuits with stripes, which to some may sound rather familiar. They would live in cramped barracks that held 100 people, sleeping in bunk beds. Rather than use the person's name, they would simply be given a number. Those who protested or cried
Wow, this is a lot of relation to Squid Games already. You got the suits, put them in the back of a bus, van, whatever. Give them a number. Very dark.
regardless of how young they might have been, were subjected to horrendous beatings by the guards. The beatings were so severe that survivors recalled waking up weeks later, some left paralyzed to this day. Others recalled watching their fellow inmates being beaten to death, witnessing seizures and fits. The dead would be dragged away and nothing more was said. Those who were killed would be buried under the foundations of a building, buried in an unmarked grave, or sold to medical researchers as a cadaver. The inmates' day would start at 5 a.m. with a loud alarm. This would then be followed by military-style training, running dozens of laps and arduous physical exercise. Only after would they be permitted to eat in the communal dining hall. Food would be extremely low quality, small portions, and sometimes rotten. It was common for the inmates to supplement
Hey, I'm not laughing at the situation, but y'all see that? He pushed the guard. Hold on, let me see. Let me watch this. This guy pushed the guard, bro.
only after would they be permitted to eat in the communal dining hall. Food would be extremely low quality, small portions, and sometimes
Damn, yeah, he was starving. He cut in front of the line, but he don't got like no suit or nothing. He just cut his way in the front of the line. I was like, bro, I'm trying to get this food and get out. And then he pushed the guard. I'm gonna say he got a beating that day, unless he got like some special grant to do all that, some authority.
rotten. It was common for the inmates to supplement their meals by
See?
any means, including eating the rats that infested the place. Much of the inmates' time at the home would be spent engaging in forced labour. This would include work in factories, in the fabrication of items such as fishing rods, forced to build new barracks, and building for the home or on farms. Such work would not be paid, whilst the profits went to those who ran the camps. Those who failed to meet the quotas would be subjected to horrific beatings, often with baseball bats. Communal punishments too would be used, where the offending inmates' barracks too would be punished as well. Often this would be in the form of what the guards called games. Inmates would be forced into stress
There we go.
positions, including hanging upside down from their bunk until they fell. The guards called this game Hiroshima. Others would have their teeth pulled out by the guards, using wire to
Oh
yank out
no.
every tooth. But for many, the worst form of abuse was SA. Some survivors who experienced this recalled that it would be every night, often in front of other inmates. Those inmates who were younger recalled being tied to a bed, unaware what was happening to them, only that it hurt very much. Women who fell pregnant because of these assaults would be forced into having abortions, often through the taking of experimental drugs. The use of experimental medication also included the drugging of disabled or mentally ill inmates. In what was dubbed the zombie room, those with disabilities or mental illness would be drugged, sedated, to keep them in bed for most of the day. Those who rebelled, fought back, and attempted to explain that they were not homeless would often be treated as if they were mentally ill. All of this horror was overseen by a Mr. Park In-kun, and he was assisted by his family. Park had been convicted in the 1970s of embezzlement and fraudulent charitable work. But this did not prevent him from setting up in the brothers' home. Park ran the camp with not only an iron fist, but with the use of religion. One of the largest buildings was a church, again built by slave labour. Sermons would be held for all of the inmates and would be divided between Mr. Park and Pastor Lim Young-sun. This was Park's brother-in-law and a fellow director of the home. Park would begin by overseeing trials for those inmates who had broken the rules. They would be brought before the inmates and forced to confess their sins. On occasion, Park would use the guilty as human punching bags, donning boxing gloves to beat the inmates. Park would then hand them over to Pastor Lim, who would deliver a religious sermon. He would talk about the necessity of the work done at the home, of the salvation offered, and that he and those who ran the home were carrying out Jesus' will. Park and his family lived in a comfortable compound within the home. Inmates from the home, including young girls, would be forced to work as servants and maids for Park's family. Whilst propaganda films of the home showed Park living, eating, and working alongside the inmates, he was like a king amongst serfs. He enjoyed the finest food.
See this photo right here? This one's very very haunting, man. Like it just okay, so I only watched like 2 episodes of Squid Games, but I do recall them being taken in the back of a bus, got these suits. They don't know what's going on. They got drugged by that smoke. You know what I mean? But hey, man, maybe I do need to catch up on the Squid Game to see like any relations with this. But yeah, this is just sad, cruel, and how do you say it? Inhuman, like not being treated as a human being. I forgot the word, but not being treated as a human being, man. This is hella crazy. Like there's so much stuff that goes on in the world like this, man. That like there's so much to cover, man. Like I never heard of something like this until like now on YouTube. But it's just the fact that they got this whole Squid Game show and then they actually have something like this. You know what I mean? Like, jeez.
And lived well on the government payments for taking in these vagrants. The home would supplement its income by the solicitation of donations through deceitful means, all to line the pockets of these directors. Children would be forced to write letters stating the good donations were doing, whilst soliciting for more. Such donations did not improve the life of the inmates at the home. The money received from the government and those donations would be embezzled by the directors. In 1986, prosecutors discovered inmates of the home working as forced labourers. Evidence was obtained of the beatings and of the labourers being locked in a barn. A criminal case was opened and Park faced charges of illegal confinement and embezzlement. But Park's close ties to the government officials meant that the charges for the more serious crimes were dropped. He was only sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for financial crimes, despite clear evidence and testimony of the horrific abuse. After his short stay in prison, Park rebranded the home, and the horrors continued. He even started to invest in property in Australia. He and Pastor Lim developed good ties with the Korean community and the church, using funds from the brothers' home to curry favour. He even invested over $1 million in purchasing a golf driving range. Park shipped over inmates from the home to be used as forced labourers at this golf range. Park and his family grew rich from the abuse and power held over thousands of people. In all, almost 40,000 people were victims of the brothers' home. The official number for those who died or were murdered is 650, though plenty suspect the death toll to be much higher. It would take decades for any real light to be shone on the horrors of the home. But it started with one survivor by the name of Han Jong-seon. He was only 9 years old when he and his older sister were taken to the home. His sister was one of the inmates drugged after she attempted to escape, ultimately confined to the psychiatric ward. Han witnessed people beaten to death, torture, and other horrors. It would take decades for him to come to terms with what he survived before he decided to bring to light the crimes. In 2012, he staged a one-man protest outside the Korean National Assembly. More and more survivors came forward and joined the encampment, which lasted for 3 years. Han documented the horrors he suffered and witnessed in a series of graphic drawings that paint a truly disturbing picture. In 2014, Park was once again charged for his crimes at the home, but in the end his charges were suspended as he had developed dementia. In 2016, Park died a free man, leaving his family with the wealth embezzled from the home. Eventually in 2020, a Truth and Reconciliation investigation into the home was opened. It found a number of failings by the Korean government and the officials. They downplayed the crimes and failed to bring those responsible to justice. The Commission also finally admitted that the government played a role in the illegal arrests and the kidnappings of these survivors, a vital step to holding the Korean government to account. For those who survived the home, many have been left broken. Many, like Han's sister, ended up requiring full-time psychiatric care. Others have been unable to come to terms with what happened to them, left with PTSD and unable to form proper relationships with others. But many had their childhoods and adolescence stole from them, subjected to horrific human rights abuses, and to this day failed to have any meaningful justice delivered.
All right, we out. Easy Call TV. Like, comment, subscribe. We on the road to 1K. Y'all was kicking it with me, the homie B. Let's go.